So we're going to set up probably the Discord. So the entire point of Project Zero is we're going to set up your CSCI 4208 portfolio repository. And of course, I have this labeled. You can read through. I'm not going to read through the entire document for you. Like, you can do that yourself. But really, the big things here is GitHub provides a lot of project management tools that we want to take advantage of over the course of this class. And so it's going to help me track all of you as developers very easily. So with that said, I created a template repo that everyone's going to have to fork. And I'll kind of walk through that process. But the idea is we want to learn how to use GitHub effectively. And then you want to be able to show that off when you go into an interview to show that you understand that you not only know how to use Git, but you know how to use project management tools. So of course, you're going to need to have a GitHub account, right? And you're going to have to, well, I think everyone has the basic working knowledge of Git. Okay, so we're going to kind of briefly look at repositories, the actions you can do with repositories. I imagine everyone's familiar with being able to clone and pull and push and commit and check the status. Excellent. So has everyone worked with branches before? We're not really going to work with branches in this lab. Has anyone forked a project before? That's what we're going to be doing today, is forking a project. Okay, we'll look at, is everyone familiar with GitHub Actions? So GitHub Actions, so one of the powerful things about GitHub, besides being in a bucket that allows you to kind of save your code remotely, is that you can trigger certain events to occur either based off of a schedule or based off of some action that occurs inside the repository. So I have some GitHub actions that are part of the project, such that as I keep issuing you labs or homework, which I'll call projects. I don't like the term homework. It sounds very kind of like not adult. And capstone-like tasks, all of these will automatically refresh into each of your forks as an issue that you can then start to assign and tackle through GitHub projects board. And so we'll look at issues and how we can assign various tags to issues. We'll look at the GitHub project that has 3 different views. Probably the one that you're going to use the most is going to be the board view that allows you to list different categories of the state of each of your projects or tasks, whether it's in progress, whether it's done, whether it's to do, or whether it's not handled at all. And so as you complete the task, as it moves to done, your issue will resolve from open when it's initially tagged into your GitHub repository into close. And so the nice thing about all of this is it's all available for me to see. Well, we're going to make it public so I can see, so I can very quickly see how much work or where you're at in the course at any given time. And then we have GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages is going to be how we're going to deploy any of the non-server code that we want to be public facing. So we can make web applications as long as the application is processed on the client side, we can host that on GitHub Pages. We just can't host servers on there. We'll have to use another technology for that. I'm going to see if I can't work with David so we can actually host on our CS servers. We'll see. IT can be kind of protective. Okay, so the first thing you're going to have to do, and I'll kind of walk this through, is we're going to go to this URL and we're going to fork this repo. Let me do that. Okay. Okay, so this is what the repo is going to look like. I guess before I fork it, let me kind of just give the walkthrough of it. The magic of the GitHub Actions that I was talking about is inside the workflows folder here. So if I were to open that up, I can see I have these YAML files, and so these YAML files contain the instructions for GitHub on how to trigger, when to trigger, what to do when an action does get triggered. You don't have to know this, but feel free to look at it so that you know what's happening. But the entire role of having all of this is to make it easier for you moving forward, just to not have to manually add each issue as I keep assigning new tasks. I wanted to automate that. Okay, I have a docs, underscore docs, because this is like meta docs. This is if you need some assistance in being able to use our course roadmap, our portfolio. This is kind of like your cheat sheet here. So moving forward, we're going to have projects, labs, and capstone. So when you go to turn in your labs, well, you have your submission instructions effectively here. But what you're going to want to do is create a new directory that's called something along the lines of like lab-01 and put all of your lab code there. And then you would push that, and you would add, you would commit, you would push, and then that's going to be part of your fork. So labs, you're actually going to upload your assignments. Now the projects and capstones, no. I had mentioned that the standard practice for a code base is that it goes into its own repository. That means that the way you're going to turn in your projects then is you'll still make like a project 0-1 folder, but it only should contain a README file that points to your actual submission. And that way, this will serve as a hub that allows me to access all of your submissions, but your submissions are still allowed to exist in its own space. And it's going to be similar with a capstone. With the capstone project, you'll have one repository that'll grow out, and I just need a link towards that. And update the README with any instructions I need to know, meta instructions. So like for the capstone part of the project, that's going to be an evolving project. So you can give me updates inside of a README that's inside of this portfolio page. And so this will allow for very clear documentation between all of you and me at any time. And of course, once we fork these projects, you can share the link to the fork project inside of the GitHub channel in our Discord. So I have access to everyone's. Okay, so let's kind of practice this really quick. Let me actually do a fork, because there's some settings I'm going to have to toggle as well to make sure the GitHub Actions work. And like there's some settings for the project board to make sure it's public. So I want to be able to view your board, so the default is that it's private. But there's some little things that are easy to navigate, but it's worth knowing where the toggles are, where the dials are at. Okay. So let's see here. I can't actually, so normally, you would see I would have an option to fork, right? But I'm not allowed to fork. I can't normally fork my own on my own account. So I'm going to create this sandbox. I have an organization account that's a sandbox that'll allow me to go ahead and fork just as a proof of concept. So the first thing you would do is create a new fork. Here, this should be your username. And then we will create that fork. Awesome. Okay. So now once I have this fork complete, let me go into the settings really quick. So here is the settings option, and just inspect the settings for this particular repo I forked. So let me go down to, okay, so I have danger zone, I have pushes, archives, pull request. Here, so this is a feature, one feature we are certainly going to have to toggle on that is turned off by default is issues. Now, the issues inside of the repository is how we can create effectively our action plan, our set of tasks that we want to go ahead and complete over the course of the semester. So our views are going to be, the Google board views is going to be dependent on this feature. So we're going to have to go in and make sure that's toggled on. So, okay. Got the check on there. So now let's go back here to the code. Okay. And we'll know when this is working because inside the README file, I actually have a part you should not touch that's going to auto update to show what you've closed and what you've opened in terms of issues. Okay, so let's go to actions then. And so when I go to actions, I'm going to get this prompt where workflows aren't being run on this forked repository because it needs my approval before it starts running any code under my account. So here I'm going to say, I understand my workflows, go ahead and enable them. Okay, so the workflows that I have set up can run in one of two ways. We can either manually run them or they'll run on a schedule of midnight. I have them scheduled to always run every midnight so that your boards can constantly update or your issues can update so you can see what the new kind of course assignments are, course tasks are. Okay, so let me go over here. Let me enable this workflow. Let me go here. Let me enable this workflow. And actually what I'll do here then is I will go to run and I'll just run this workflow now. And now I should see I get this option, workflow run was successfully requested. So if I go to all workflows here in my actions pane, I can see it's currently processing. And then when it's complete, it's going to show either a check that is successful or an X to show that there was a failure. Yellow just means that it's indeterminate because it's currently processing. So let's wait until this is done. Mm-hmm.
Is that unrelated to the issues there with it?
So we're not really going to do a lot with workflows and GitHub Actions over the course of the semester. So you don't really need to have a hard understanding, but effectively what our workflow is it's a sequence of YAML scripts that we tell GitHub to execute based off of some triggering action. And we're going to see like what this sequence does. You won't have to do any of this over the semester. The only reason why I'm even showing you this is because I really want to use GitHub, but I want to use all of the project management tools at GitHub, and GitHub doesn't have, I was hoping, so they have the ability to export your issues, your task, but there's no way to import. Ideally, I just wanted to give you the task in a JSON that can just be imported in, but like I said, I had to hack together GitHub Actions. That's what took so long to get the submission system up and running because I had to scaffold all this myself to get it to where I wanted it. But it's something that's good to see because Again, when you go into industry, they'll have the automation for continuous integration and continuous deployment, and that's what these tools are really aimed at, CI/CD. Okay, so then let me go over here. Let me sync my labels. So I'll run this workflow. And again, I can click on Actions here to see the state of it. We can see yellow, it's processing. And you can tell it takes, I think what, the C took like 2 minutes. It takes just a couple of minutes sometimes for these to process. And then finally, let's update the submission table. This is a very visual thing. So if you're wondering, like, where is the data being pulled from, just so everything's transparent, let me show you that while we wait for these processes to run. Okay, sync labels is done, so the updated README submission table is performing right now. So let me go to here. No, not here. Let me go to, okay. Our course. So I've created inside of my instructor repo this .github folder that includes whatever labels I might want to define. That way it's mutable and you don't have to resync. Once you fork, you never have to resync with it. That's the idea, is that it's your fork and you're not merging it back in at all. You're not doing any kind of pull request. So what I wanted to do was set up a workflow that I can update, and it automatically updated your forks without you having to do anything. And so I created this roadmap.json file, which is available now through my repo, and it pulls this file into that YAML file, and it uses that to know what issues. And so over the course of the semester, I'll update this with new labs, new projects, and new capstones along with the dates. So this is what it's reading from. So anytime you have access to the JSON file as well. Just a little bit of knowledge of what's happening there. Okay, so now let me go back over to the code. It says everything was successful. So now if I look at my README, remember the README actually had an empty table? Well, one of those actions from the YAML file was to actually go check, and based off of the issues inside, to populate the issues. So here we could say we have our capstone 1 where you find a team, lab 1, which is that HTML first interactive game. The lab, lab 1, lab 2 is the CSS crash course. Lab 3 is the Bootstrap portfolio, and project 1 interactive game. Actually, I should update this and get project 0 as well. Should get credit for it. Okay. And now notice also these are the keys that are going to be applied towards the issues. We're going to look at the issues, and this is how I know which of these you've completed or haven't completed, because anything you haven't completed is going to have the status open. So let me go here now. If I go to issues, now notice all of a sudden I have 5 issues. I did not have to have y'all manually make this yourselves. Power of automation. So each of these issues we can see are open. And again, GitHub is very powerful that once you have these issues, you have the ability to filter based off of their state or various conditions or various tags they have. So that's the entire point of labeling the tags and even color coding these tags for you. So like anything that's purple, I have to maybe adjust some of these colors I see now. But like the idea is that like blue might be labs, so you can easily see all the labs. And of course you can just filter based off of labs. Capstone stuff will be purple. I don't see a red. I might make the capstones red and then leave projects, which are effectively your homework, as maybe purple. I'm still playing around with how the coloring and stuff. It's all still fresh. And in addition to that, we want to think of a block of content as a module as we go through the course. And what I mean by that is lab 1 was HTML, lab 2 was CSS, lab 3 was Bootstrap. They all deal with non-JavaScript client-side development. So the capstone for that, like the end project, that makes use of those three labs would be Project 1, the interactive HTML game that uses inline JavaScript and some kind of styling. You can use either CSS or Bootstrap for it as your submission for that. So then module 2 then was going to be some JavaScript related homework or project that comes in conclusion of the JavaScript labs we do. Does that make sense? So we can kind of like discretize the work we're doing in this class in terms of how it fits together in terms of those deliverables, the projects you're delivering on. So I'm just trying to make that as easily parsable as possible. And again, I have a title for each of these. Okay, so is everyone with me so far? Does this make sense? Perfect. So then, let me show you the last, not the last element. I'll show you, I have two other things I need to show you. So I got to show you GitHub Pages too. So the next thing I want to do is I want to be able to take and use these issues in a very easy and meaningful way. So if I click up here on this tab that says Projects, I can go to a new project. Okay. Close that. Okay, so I have my new project. First thing I'm going to do is let's actually give it, well, we'll name it in just a moment. So when I go to add an item, well, let me add the item first. Let's be very clear. So I'm going to add an item to my project. I should be able to. And so if I click Add from Repository, it gives me the option to add items from the issues that are already existed in that repository. I can then select all the items and then add those. I can close this now, and now we can see inside of my board view, I now have all of those all those issues inside of this view. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually name this. We don't want everyone just to have untitled projects. So let's call this I'll just call it that. Username, full name, dash CSCI4208. Makes it easily identifiable. Now, the other thing I want to do, since I'm inside of the settings, is I want to make sure that it's going to be public. So, save changes, make a copy. Here, right here, if I go to the danger zone, it's currently listed as private, which means only you can see that board. Now, normally that's what you want, just you and the developers working on the project. But keep in mind, I'm using this board, and I don't want it to be set up where I have to be a developer on everyone's project, right? I want to be external. So you can make this public, and then I can access your board without having to be a member of your fork. Okay, so once I make those two changes, public and give it an actual name, I'm going to save that. Okay, so now let me go back to projects. Okay, so just some things to look at inside of projects. Here, this is the table view. The table view can allow us to see the various statuses and who's assigned to a project. So if you're working in a team, you can actually assign for each issue a team member, and it's very clear who's doing what work. And again, the beautiful thing about GitHub is all this is tracked and made visible to me too, including timestamps and commit histories, and it's like such a great journaling tool to see kind of what work you're putting into each of these projects. Okay, so if I go to, there's three different views that we're going to kind of look at. We'll look at the board view, which is going to give us a no status. So notice when we looked at the table view a moment ago, none of these had a status assigned to them yet. And none of them have any assignees assigned to them either. Now I can always just like click on this, and from whoever is a member of this repo, I can assign someone responsible for that issue. Okay, let me go to view 2 here. This is a GUI, so I can take, say, for instance, and say, oh, I need to work on this. I need to work on this, 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 and this. And now I can start to stage all of my items and give them a status of they all have to be done. Okay, we'll play around with this some more in just a bit. Let me also go into the roadmap. The roadmap view, if you click on markers, use milestones, the milestones should show the date that's in the issue for what the due dates are. So that's how I'll be able to communicate due dates with you, right? So if I click on here, it shows me which issues in particular are due at that time. And clearly, I'm in my roadmap. I've been playing around with this, right, for the last week or so, trying to make sure that this was as seamless as possible. So the due date is in the past. But future due dates will be in the future. Okay, so now let's just kind of play with this one. So those are the 3 different views we have. And of course, since it's public now, let me see if I can't open up an incognito window such that I'm not logged in. And I should still be able to see this board, right? So this is the way I'll be able to access these boards, to see what you've done, what you are currently working on, and what is, I read that backwards, what's to do, what's in progress of being done, and what is completed. Okay, let me close this. And again, you can confirm that it's public by just opening up an incognito window to make sure it actually opens for you before you share kind of any links. And I want these links to be in the README file, update the README file of your fork, to have your name and have all the relevant links. Okay, let me update some of this too. So let me say that, let's say I'm complete this. And okay, that's perfect. So if I jump back to my, let me go to here. Let me jump back into my repo. I'll go to my actions and just force a pull really quick. So let me go to run workflow, and I'll just manually run this so that we can see, as you actually start completing projects, how that's going to meaningfully kind of update inside of your fork. And so here we can see, in terms of the status, that I have one thing that was moved into closed. And again, when I move that into the complete list, it's going to automatically, notice I had 5 issues before. Now it shows I have 4 open issues and 1 closed issue. And again, the way you get credit for your assignments over the course of the semester is to close all your issues. Okay, that's almost everything. There's one more feature of GitHub projects I want you to be familiar with, and it's like how to actually deploy a web page. So that I hadn't quite. Okay, so let me do this. Let me go to the code. Let me, okay. And again, it's going to say that our branch is ahead. That's fine. Don't ever sync with it. That's supposed to happen. Okay, let's see here. So, issues. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to unroll the code option, and I'm just going to quickly clone this. So let me save this. Okay. Now let me open up here, File Explorer. Let me go into my desktop. Inside of my desktop, let me go into this course. And here, let's just actually, let's go ahead and open our terminal here. First thing I'm going to do is switch to bash. And now I'm going to do git clone. Okay, and we will clone this project. Excellent. Okay, so now that I have this project here, let's go in here. This is it right here. Let us do this. Let's go into it. What was it called again? CSCI. There we go. Okay, so let me do this. Touch. No, let's not touch. Let's vim index.html. So we're going to create a HTML file. And the root HTML file should always be given the name index. That's the one it's going to default to if you don't give a specific HTML path. Okay, so here, let's just go ahead and make a very simple HTML page. As a proof of concept. We'll do a heading one, and we'll just say, hello, world. Perfect. Wait, I think world should be spelled correctly. World. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have some HTML. Now, let me escape out. Let's write and quit. So now if I do just inspect it really quick, yeah, I have some HTML in there. Okay, so if I do git status, I can say, oh, I have a change. So let me tell it to add. So now if I do git status again, I can see, okay, I've added this new change to the local repository. Now let's commit all of our changes. Commit with the message. And here I'll just do an inline message of added index.html. Please always use meaningful commit messages for this project. The goal is you want to be able to show this project off with the commit history and with all the issue tracking as proof that you know how to use project management tools. Okay, and then let's go ahead and push. Okay, so now let me jump back over to my repo here. And so now we can see inside of my repo, I have this index.html file. So why don't we go ahead and set it up so we can actually deploy it so it's publicly available. This is going to require me to go into settings again. And inside of settings, there's going to be this option that's, I think, in this here, right here, pages. So inside this menu option here, we're going to click on that. And it's default to none, so we're going to make the main branch the deployment directory of our GitHub pages. So then we will save this. And then it's effectively just that simple. So now if I go back, and I'll just wait just a few moments just to make sure it goes live. And Okay. I'm trying to remember. Oh, well, doesn't matter. Okay. What is the name of the repo? Let me grab that. And then, let's see, since it's here, let me do this. I don't normally. The URL is typically going to be whatever your username is, .github.io. Usually in the settings, they also show you where it's at, but I don't remember where in the settings it is. Okay, so remember correctly, it's going to be whatever your username is, .github.io/ and then whatever the repository folder is. Ah, there we go. Hello world, our HTML. So this is how we can go ahead and deploy publicly any of our client-side web applications. And now the client-side web applications can not only parse HTML and do the CSS styling, but any JavaScript code that you have that runs inside of the browser can also, so it's not just static web pages, right? You can create very dynamic, powerful applications. You can't host a server on GitHub Pages. So we'll use this for a lot of our initial, most of our deployments for anything that's client-facing, client-side. Okay, I think that's all that I wanted to show you in terms of how we're going to be submitting moving forward. Does anyone have any questions? This is being recorded. I recorded a desktop view just in case you needed a reference, because I didn't know if it would be worth it or not. So I will go ahead and publish this 37-minute recording onto the YouTube page, and I'll link to it inside of the README so that everyone can kind of see the same walkthrough we just did again. Preferably probably in like 2x speed. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, let me stop the recording. Let's just say, try to